Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well and welcome to another episode of Building Accurate Habitats in Jurassic World Evolution 2. In this episode, I will be talking about the Carnotaurus, one of the most famous and best understood theropods from the southern hemisphere. To this day, only one skeleton of Carnotaurus has ever been found. However, this fossil was so well preserved that imprints of the dinosaur's skin were recovered, demonstrating that Carnotaurus had rough, pebbly skin with rows of body scale running down its back. However, what makes Carnotaurus so recognizable are the two prominent horns on top of its head. These horns are a very unique trait amongst predators, since horns tend to be a unique trait amongst animals that are prey. Can you think of any modern carnivores that have horns? If you do, comment below. In this episode, we will do a complete species profile about the meat-eating bull, and then attempt to recreate its environment in an enclosure. So let's jump right in and start getting to know the Carnotaurus, a medium-sized theropod whose discovery ushered in a new age of paleontology in the southern hemisphere. For those who like to skip ahead, I added some timestamps for you to click. For everyone else, let's begin. Carnotaurus comes from the genus of Abelisaurus theropod dinosaurs that lived in South America during the late Cretaceous period, sometime between 71 and 69 million years ago. By this period, South America was already isolated from both Africa and North America. And during this time, Carnotaurus was one of the largest dinosaurs from its genus, being around 23 to 30 feet in length and weighing between 2 to 3 tons. Other abelisaurids in its genus that Carnotaurus was related with include dinosaurs such as the Abelisaurus, Majungasaurus, Ceratosaurus, and Rajasaurus. These abelisaurids became the dominant predators in the late Cretaceous of South America, then Gondwana, replacing the Carcharodontosauridae, and filling the ecological niche filled by tyrannosaurids in the northern continents. While Carnotaurus had the standard theropod morphology of a bipedal animal with a large head and small arms, it still possessed a number of features that made it one of the most bizarre yet dangerous meat-eating dinosaurs ever found. Its skull measures 23.5 inches in length and was proportionally shorter and stockier than what's seen in any other carnivorous dinosaur. This skull was not a solid feature, it was actually what is referred to as kinetic. This means that as Carnotaurus ate or took a bite out of something, different parts of the skull would move around in order to reduce the total stress on the bone. Even though kinetic skulls are known in other dinosaurs, in Carnotaurus these movable skull parts are even more numerous and developed, giving Carnotaurus the title of having the most kinetic dinosaur skull. Unfortunately, for the small skull came with it a rather weak bite force, but to make up for it, research has shown that its jaws were able to open very widely apart from other theropod dinosaurs in order to catch its prey. Its brain cavity suggests that an acute sense of smell, while hearing and sight were less developed, but it made up for it by being well adapted for running and was possibly the fastest out of the largest theropods. Carnotaurus also had a lengthy and powerful tail, which assisted in balance while running and to help the dinosaur achieve its top speed. Its uniquely shaped vertebrae allowed the caudofemoralis muscle, a large piece of muscle connecting the tail and thigh, to be bigger and stronger than most other theropods, broadly allowing Carnotaurus to being the fastest non-orthonomimic theropod, reaching speeds up to 35 miles per hour. Its neck and shoulder blades were very well developed, but the arms were incredibly short, with forearms so shrunken they were practically just wrists. This is because abelisaurids have very reduced forelimbs, and particularly the arms of Carnotaurus were far smaller than those of Tyrannosaurus rex with very limited function. It possibly had the smallest forelimbs in the whole animal kingdom compared to body mass. Its hands just had four small fingers, and only 2 of them actually had bones. As mentioned earlier, the pair of horns on its frontal lobe were one of its most unique features, as there are very few predators that exhibit these traits, even today. Some animals such as the Jackson's chameleon, horned viper, horny lizard, and even the narwhal are some predators that do exhibit some horn-like structure, but these are few and in between. Its abelisaurid cousins such as the Ceratosaurus and to an extent Majungasaurus also sported some type of horn on its head, but the horns on Carnotaurus were thick and cone-shaped, internally solid, and measured about 6 inches in length. The use of these horns is not entirely clear, but several interpretations have revolved around using these horns in fighting between the same species or in possibly killing prey, though a use and display for courtship or recognition of members of the same species is possible as well. Some paleontologists compare the infighting between Komodo dragons as an interpretation of how Carnotaurus might have fought, not bashing their heads like rams or bulls, but rather pushing and using momentum to overtake their opponent. Another of its most notable features is the armor on its body. The bones on its head, for example, not only form the large horns on top of its head, but also feature pits and bumps which are covered with wrinkled keratinous skin. The skin of its head is made up of irregularly patterned scales, while over the rest of its body, its shaped scales form a regular non-overlapping pattern. In addition, it had rows of pointed bump on its head, sides, and tails, which gives it some limited degree of protection. Larger such bumps are located towards the dorsal side, whereas those on its flanks are smaller. The bumps are 3 to 4 inches apart from each other. They are made up of scales and lack bony cores, so due to this many people mistake them for osteoderms. At the time it was discovered, Abelisaurs were not very well understood. The exceptional quality with which the Carnotaurus was preserved allowed paleontologists new insight into its physiology. Carnotaurus was first discovered in La Colonia Formation of Chubut Province, Argentina in 1984, by an expedition led by Argentinian paleontologist Jose Bonaparte. It was the eighth expedition within the project named Jurassic and Cretaceous Terrestrial Vertebrates of South America, which started in 1976 and was sponsored by the National Geographic Society. A year after its discovery, Jose Bonaparte published his findings on a new genus and species and gave it the name Carnotaurus sastri. Carnotaurus is derived from two Latin words carnis, meaning flesh, and taurus, meaning bull, and can be directly translated to meat-eating bull, a reference to the dinosaur's bull-like horns. The specific name sastri honors Angel Sastre, owner of the ranch where the skeleton was discovered. This name also happened to be a rare instance in which a dinosaur had been named after a mammal. Another example is Hippodraco, the horse dragon, a genus of ornithopod. Bonaparte in 1990 suggested that these horns would have probably formed the bony cores of much longer keratinous sheaths. 2 years earlier, in 1988, paleontologist Gregory Paul proposed that the horns were budding weapons and that the small orbita would have minimized the possibility of hurting their eyes while fighting. 10 years later, in 1998, Gerardo Maceta and colleagues suggested that Carnotaurus used its horns in a similar way to rams. They calculated and argued that the neck musculature was strong enough to absorb the force of two individuals colliding with their heads frontally. While arguments on the use of its horns continued, Robert Bakker in 1998 found that Carnotaurus fed upon very large prey, especially sauropods. As Dr. Bakker noted, several adaptations of the skull, the short snout, relatively small teeth, and strong back of the skull had independently evolved in Carnotaurus. These features suggest that the upper jaw was used like a serrated club to inflict wounds on big sauropods, causing them to bleed out and weaken after repeated attacks. During its excavation process, it was discovered that the Carnotaurus specimen had left behind a significant number of fossil skin impressions. These impressions, found beneath the skeleton's right side, come from different body parts, including the lower jaw, the front of the neck, the shoulder girdle, and the rib cage. Stephen Serkis in 1997 suggested that these structures may have protected the animal's sides while fighting members of the same species and other theropods, arguing that similar structures can be found on the neck of the modern iguana, where they provide limited protection in combat. It was not until the 21st century that similar well-preserved abelisaurs were described, including Allosaurus, Majungasaurus, and Scorpiovenator, allowing paleontologists to re-evaluate certain aspects of the anatomy of Carnotaurus. Analysis of the jaw structure of Carnotaurus by Maceta and colleagues in 1998, 2004, and 2009 suggested that the dinosaur was capable of quick bites, but not strong ones. They estimated that Carnotaurus had a bite force of around 3,300 newtons. To put that into perspective, humans have a bite force of around 120 to 150 newtons. While exceedingly strong compared to ours, it was relatively weak for its size. Nevertheless, these quick bites are more important than strong bites when capturing small prey, as shown by studies of modern-day crocodiles. This interpretation was questioned by Francois Terrien and colleagues in 2005 when they found that the biting force of Carnotaurus was twice that of the American alligator, an animal with one of the strongest bite forces living today. These researchers also noted analogies with modern Komodo dragons. The flexural strength of the lower jaw decreases towards the tip linearly, indicating that the jaws were not suited for high-precision catching of small prey before delivering slashing wounds to weaken big prey. As a consequence, according to the study, Carnotaurus may have mainly preyed upon large dinosaurs, possibly by ambush. Paleontologist Fernando Novas in 2009 interpreted several skeletal features as adaptations for delivering blows with the head. He suggested that the shortness of the skull may have made head movements quicker by reducing the moment of inertia, while the muscular neck would have allowed strong head blows. He also noted an enhanced rigidity and strength of the spinal column that may have evolved to withstand shocks conducted by the head and neck. The significantly large back part of the skull where jaw muscles are located gives the Carnotaurus a Rottweiler effect. The larger back part of the skull allowed for a stronger bite also. Fernando also found that the teeth had a very unique design. They were very wide and relatively blunt, resembling a railroad spike. These teeth were very suitable for crushing bone, making this carnivore's bite enormously lethal. More recent studies support Carnotaurus having a weaker bite and a more flexible skull, leading some to suggest that it was a pursued predator that swallowed relatively large prey whole. Other recent studies show that the caudofemoralis muscles of Carnotaurus thighs weighed up to 300 pounds apiece, which accounted for a significant proportion of this dinosaur's weight. Combined with the shape and orientation of this dinosaur's tail, this implied that Carnotaurus could sprint at unusually high speeds, estimated at about 35 miles per hour, making one of the fastest largest theropods ever discovered. A rather recent study from 2020 by Mauricio Cerrone and colleagues agreed that the horns of Carnotaurus supported keratinid sheaths, but argued that these sheaths would not have been greatly longer than the bony cores. Throughout these following years, we hope that various studies done on Carnotaurus will allow us to learn much more about them. Now that we have some knowledge on Carnotaurus, let's talk about the environment which it lived in to give us a better idea of how to replicate its natural habitat. As mentioned earlier, paleontologist Jose Bonaparte discovered the only Carnotaurus skeleton in La Colonia Formation, which is situated in the north of the Chubut province in Argentina. During the time of Carnotaurus, this area consisted of estuaries, lagoons, tidal flats, and coastal plains, with the climate being seasonal with both dry and humid periods. Paleofauna from La Colonia Formation include aquatic ferns, aquatic angiosperms, and a diversity of other plants including cycads, ginkgos, and seed plants. The skull shape and the forward-facing eyes of the Carnotaurus would have given it an advantage in hunting down fast prey as well, so some paleontologists believe that the Carnotaurus may have been an ambush predator. This meant that Carnotaurus may have preferred hiding in cover to ambush prey, but would often venture into the open in order to locate and search for resources. At the time, the world had a fairly warm climate with high sea levels. Earth climates cool down and sea levels drop later in the Cretaceous, and as the climate changed, Carnotaurus would not adapt in time, and it went extinct close to 69 million years ago. Hey guys, so welcome back to the park. As you can see, I had to start an entire new one. I had a new computer upgrade and some files got deleted, so the park's going to be starting all over again. But for now, this is our Carnotaurus enclosure. And so we're just gonna try to recreate it to best of our ability. We got a little lake here. But let's go ahead and start off with a tidal pool. You know, there are tidal pools, lagoons, lakes, and small rivers. So let's go ahead and start with that. Let's do our water over here. We got a goat over here that's not allowing us, but I think that's good enough. For now, we'll have the goat. Gonna chill there for a bit. Meanwhile, we'll erase this, make it smaller. And we're gonna start building a small little river all the way over there, and then we'll have a little lagoon there. Oh, looks like we have some terrain constraint. I guess that's as far as we'll go. Oh, that works out, I guess. Alright, so let's start building a little river. All the way there. It's gonna be tricky right here. We're gonna have to make it really skinny. And this is where our lagoon's gonna go. Now we just start cutting some parts off. Oh, went too much. There we go. Now we just cut the river a bit, make sure it's not too, not too wide. But, that looks good. If you want, you can have another part of the river going this way, making it very, very skinny. There you go. And then, it's your habitat, so you can play around with it, add more parts to it, widen it, lengthen it. So yeah, up to you. Go ahead and leave it like that. And then right here, let's start working with our terrain. let's go ahead and do some nice sandy terrain over here, as well as on the other side. 'Cause it's supposed to be, part of the coast. So we'll do some sand over here. And then make sure that, we do have some green around here. Throw in some dirt. And a trick you can do here is you can always put some rock under the water, and it gives it a more um, deep look to it. Don't see it right away, but the small little details is what counts. So go ahead and do it to all of it. And once you're done, you can just work out with the rest. After that, let's go ahead and work with our sand a little bit, not too much. That's rock, but just play around with it. Don't add too much sand, but it's very grassy as well. A lot of foliage. Just right here on the banks. This bank right here is going to be really sandy. This is going to be really sandy. And it's going to be rocky. Add some dirt. And I think it looks good. You can always mess around with it, as always. Add some rocks. We have some desert rocks, some taiga, some temperate, and some tropical. I'm going to go with both either tropical and temperate. And, just mess around. I like to group them. You can do whatever you want, though. I think we're going to leave a little bit, not too much. Just so Carnotaurus does have some open plains to run around. You can see these guys are already starting to fight. And if you want, just put one more here, another one up here, another one over here. And just play around with it. I'm going to put it all towards the banks. There we go. That looks good enough. And then now we will play with our rocks. A terrain we didn't really have to play around with it a lot. Very flat terrain as far as I've read about Carnotaurus' habitat allows them to run through. So yeah, plus our, habitat's very narrow. So yeah, just try not to play with it. One thing you could do is make the river a bit more deep, but if we're gonna leave it like that. I feel like Carnotaurs will have difficulty running through this in real life, so it tends to be like more shallower rivers, I want to say. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and move on to our last part, which is going to be ginkgos, bit of grasslands, bit of temskirs or ferns, and some angiosperms and ginkgos. So let's go ahead and play with our temskia. We're gonna add some right here where a lot of the dirt was. When I get another one of these tall trees, there we go, perfect. Not too much. Add some cycads. Let's actually add these right here. There we go, that looks perfect. And then our angiosperms, we can be seed plants. Let's actually put these guys in the back over here. And we're gonna mix in some ginkgos in there. And let's actually hold on. Let's take this off. It's gonna be sandy, so let's take this off. But let's continue with our ginkgos here. This, for example, would be the area where Carnotaurus would ambush from. Yeah, just put some ginkgos all around. Let's actually widen this area, make it nice and very, very deep foliage. You could say that he runs from here, and the open plains are right here. And speaking of the open plains, let's go ahead and just finish it off with some, leafy climbers or fibrous ground cover. I like fibrous ground cover, so we'll go ahead and do that. Add a couple here, a couple there, not too much. And there you have it. This is our Carnotaurus habitat. One thing you can do, nice tip I read on Reddit, is for the terrain. Since these guys are pretty big, you can go ahead and put some dirt where the most traveled spots of this enclosure would be. So, around the feeder. These are parts where Carnotaurus, for example, run through and just kick up the dirt and grass. These are like the most common routes, actually, right here. So yeah, that's a nice little trick you can do. Aside from that, go ahead and let me know what you would change. I think it looks good. You could argue that I could put less foliage to have more open areas for the Carnotaurus, but I think it looks pretty good. You guys let me know what you guys think. This guy seems to be enjoying it. If you want to make Carnotaurus feel more at home, you'd have some dinosaurs that it coexisted with during its era. You will have to play around with your sandbox options to help your compatibility issues. Rather unusually, the remains of the only identified specimen of Carnotaurus are not associated with any other dinosaurs aside from the Amargasaurus, but these two lived millions of years apart from each other and never coexisted. Carnotaurus is also associated with turtles, snakes, crocodiles, marine reptiles, and some mammals. While this doesn't mean that Carnotaurus was the only dinosaur in its habitat, it was almost certainly the apex predator of its ecosystem, enjoying a diet more varied than the average theropod. The discovery of partial postcranial skeletons belonging to two sauropods identified as Chiboutosaurus gives evidence that both Carnotaurus and Chiboutosaurus coexist in the Chubut province towards the end of the late Cretaceous period. As mentioned earlier, studies have suggested that Carnotaurus was able to hunt down large prey such as sauropods, while other studies found it mainly preyed on relatively small animals. We really don't have many other good fossils from other dinosaurs from that area, so we still don't have a very good idea of what Carnotaurus would have been hunting. But a good hypothesis is whatever it was, it might have been able to run fast too. Carnotaurus has had a rather rich history in the Jurassic Park franchise, making numerous appearances in the big screen. It was first mentioned in the 1995 novel The Lost World by Michael Crichton as a somewhat of a color-changing chameleon-like dinosaur, but this ability was purely speculative. Soon after that, it also made an appearance in a level of video game adaptation of the film. Within the Jurassic Park universe, we know that sometimes in the late 1980s or early 1990s, at around the same time Carnotaurus was being described and understood, InGen succeeded in cloning the dinosaur from DNA recovered from amber samples. These InGen specimens reached 35 feet and weighed about 1.5 tons, somewhat larger than the 24 to 29 foot fossil specimen. Concept art of hatchling Carnotaurus demonstrate that started at life with a considerably larger head in proportion to its body, similar to many baby animals. The jaws are less developed, though its legs are already strong and it is capable of running from an early age. The horns and scales are less prominent, growing out as the animal gets older. While its growth rate is not known, a female Carnotaurus hatched in 2008 was fully grown by 2018, so it reached adulthood in at most 9 or 10 years. This growth rate may have been boosted by growth supplements provided by its creators or by genetic modification. Efforts to put them on exhibit were made, but the animals proved too aggressive for park exhibition and were removed from public areas until a solution could be found. During the 2015 incident of Jurassic World, off film and covered in the Netflix show Camp Cretaceous, an adult male Carnotaurus nicknamed Toro escaped from his paddock and moved southeast across the island, eventually reaching the Mosasaurus feeding show arena. From here, he entered the maintenance tunnels, pursuing survivors of the incident south to Ferry Landing. After arriving here, he was fought off and severely burned in an explosion, so he retreated north again. Toro was encountered numerous times by the survivors of Camp Cretaceous, Jurassic World's resident summer camp, and he eventually settled in a valley not terribly far from the golf course, building a nest and hunting the local animals. While exhibiting Carnotaurus proved to be much of a challenge, Carnotaurus DNA was utilized by Dr. Henry Wu in 2014 in the creation of the Indominus genome. In particular, the horns of the Indominus were derived from the abelisauriid gene donors such as Carnotaurus. Ancient research had found that these horns were not used in physical combat, but rather as a form of species recognition. In Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, it is revealed that there are surviving Carnotaurus populations remaining on Isla Nublar, yet they face an impending danger in the form of the erupting volcano Mount Saibo. We get to see the Carnotaurus for the first time during the volcano eruption, where it runs into Owen, Claire, and Franklin. It begins approaching them, but it is distracted by a running Sinoceratops. A short fight ensues between the two, and the Sinoceratops runs away, allowing the Carnotaurus to shift its focus back on the main characters. As it charges once again, it is intercepted by T-Rex, who promptly kills the Carnotaurus. However, some short scenes later, we see a lone Carnotaurus running away at the edge of the cliff, along with other dinosaurs. That lone Carnotaurus, along with another, was captured by Eli Mills and brought to the Lockwood Manor. It was then freed along with other dinosaurs at the end of the film. At this ending point of the film, One of the Carnotaurus, who has a broken horn and scars on his face, joins the Tyrannosaurus rex of Isla Nublar in tearing apart and eating Eli Mills, as he attempts to flee the manor with the Indominus Rex DNA sample that is eventually smashed underfoot during the attack. The Tyrannosaurus then knocks over the Carnotaurus with her head, and the Carnotaurus gets up and runs off. It is a popular fan theory that this Carnotaurus is Toro, due to its many scars, black skin with dark and red marks across its body, and its stunted broken horn. The two Carnotaurus were released into the wilds of Northern California along with all the other dinosaurs. Interestingly enough, the sounds of Carnotaurus in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom were made from vocalizations from an orangutan and of styrofoam with a double bass bow, typically used by classical musicians. In the trailers for the upcoming film Jurassic World Dominion, it shows a Carnotaurus and Allosaurus in the city of Malta terrorizing its citizens, as well as another shot that seems to be located in some sort of underground fighting ring. Additionally, just this week the Department of Prehistoric Wildlife published its Dino Tracker website, providing real-time access to dinosaur sightings across the globe and information on what you should do in case of a dinosaur encounter. It shows Carnotaurus being sighted in Cañaguas, Peru, and provides us with a video taken from a bus where a Carnotaurus is seen hunting some of the local wildlife. One last thing about Carnotaurus in the Jurassic Park franchise comes from the original script for Jurassic Park III. A scene was set for a Carnotaurus to approach the main characters on the riverbank when searching through the Spinosaurus dung. However, due to the release of Disney's Dinosaur, this dinosaur was replaced with a Ceratosaurus. Carnotaurus became even more famous as a result of its starring role in the Disney animated film Dinosaur. However, the dinosaurs depicted in the film were closer in size to T-Rex than the actual real Carnotaurus. Its horn-like and scaly appearance made it a terrifying villain in the movie, so it was also made a regular antagonist in the much more recent canceled TV show, Terra Nova. The Carnotaurus, or meat-eating bull, was one of the fastest and most bizarre meat-eating theropods ever discovered and is a beautiful but deadly addition to your Jurassic Park. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.